Together over the past 6 months, we have organized this event not only as our senior project, but as an effort to connect our greater Tampa Bay community and highlight the issues that matter most. Before we get started, we wanted to introduce to you the Department of Women and Gender Studies, our sponsors this evening, and the major and minor they offer. Both of us have had the opportunity to be a part of this incredible program and are honored to be able to share it with you this evening.
As the first program of its kind in Florida, the faculty and students at the University of South Florida's Women and Gender Studies Department had made it its mission to promote social justice by engaging students in the discovery and production of knowledge that has emerged from feminist perspectives on cultures and societies since 1977. To carry out this nearly 40-year tradition, it is essential that we continue to facilitate discussion and activism between students and members of the community.
The Department of Women and Gender Studies at the University of South Florida was established in order to expand the fields of feminist education, research, and practice. We teach students to use the analytic skills that emerge from engaging the intersections of gender, race, ethnicity, class, sexuality, ability, and nation in order to promote responsible citizenship in a diverse and transnational environment. We expose the limits in higher education caused by excluded women and other marginalized groups and create knowledge that is transformative and inclusive. We aim for knowledge that will better all of people's lives, not just the lives of a few.
We connect our work as academics with the social, political, and economic world outside of the university to educate our students about social inequalities that result from sexism, heterosexism and homophobia, racism, classism, ableism, and ethnocentrism. We link knowledge, research, teaching, and activism. We seek to empower students through feminist critique of social, cultural, and institutional structures that enable them to think more critically about their own lives and that inspires them to work to achieve as active students for social change.
BA Women and Gender Studies. Our required courses include the Introduction to Women's Studies, Issues of Feminism, Feminist Research Methods, Feminist Theories, Classic or Contemporary, and the capstone class of Women and Gender Studies, which was the result of this event.
A lot of the courses offered by the department fulfill FKL requirements. Ask yourself, in what career or endeavor will knowing about difference, knowing about diversity, and knowing about social justice not serve you well?
Don't be afraid to ask us or any member of our amazing staff here tonight about how you can get involved. The members of Triota, the Women and Gender Studies Honor Society, have graciously set up a table in the back and have plenty of information and handouts that will help you with your needs.
As we said, this event is the outcome of our senior capstone project. We wanted to create an event that would educate and facilitate discussion on topics that are affecting this community and encourage students to partake in activism to fight against them. Since the untimely death of Trayvon Martin in 2013, the Black Lives Matter movement has been fighting against racially motivated crimes and racial inequality in the United States. What started as a simple hashtag, Black Lives Matter, has turned into an international activist movement. Since then, BLM has demonstrated against the death of numerous African Americans on police actions as well as racial inequality.
Having been a part of WGS the past 4 years, we have been able to gain a greater understanding of the intersection of race and gender. When presented with the opportunity to host this event, it became very apparent to us that this often undermined topic needed to be given a voice on our campus. We wanted to educate the community on the intersection of identities and how feminism and Black women uniquely influence this movement.
And now I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Jessie Turner, who will be our moderator for the evening. Dr. Jessie Turner has been our advisor throughout this entire project, as well as is a senior instructor of Women and Gender Studies at the University of South Florida, where she teaches courses on the history of politics of mixed-race identity, the history of U.S. women of color, introductory women's and gender studies, research mythologies, as well as other topics. She holds a PhD in Chicano and Chicana Studies from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Dr. Turner researches the experiences and identities of mixed heritage Mexican Americans from an intersectional perspective. Please welcome Dr. Turner.
First, before I introduce our panelists, I would like to say how enjoyable this process was, having this activism-based and research-based project, hosting your capstone, resulting in this event for these two majors that we have. I would also like to thank Megan Wiedemann, yes. See it mostly in email, don't say it a whole lot. Megan Wiedemann for her work as our teaching assistant, research assistant for this project as well. And then Triota members for coming out and supporting and being a co-sponsor for this event as well. Okay. So Dr. Cheryl Rodriguez on the far end is a cultural anthropologist and an associate professor of Africana Studies, as well as the director of the Institute of Black Life at USF. Her research interests include feminisms in Africa and the African diaspora, community ethnography, the critical intersection of gender, race, and class, and community-based programs for urban youth. Dr. Rodriguez has conducted a range of anthropological projects and has published articles on issues related to gender, race, and class issues, including women's anti-poverty activism. Her research on women and microenterprise development was partially supported by the Women's Research and Education Institute in Washington, D.C. In 2000, Dr. Rodriguez co-directed a project on the impact of the federal Hope 6 program on women and children in the U.S. public housing system. This project was funded by the National Science Foundation and the USF Collaborative for Children, Families, and Communities. Dr. Rodriguez has also conducted extensive research on programs for youth in low-income communities, including research on the Youth Opportunities Movement in Louisiana and Florida. She was also the PI of a major grant from the U.S. Department of Education for a project on after-school programming in local communities. Dr. Rodriguez was also a co-PI on the Central Avenue Legacies Project, an ethno-historical exploration of Tampa's African-American history. Donna Davis, on my immediate left, is a highly experienced community organizer that has done amazing work in several places, including Denver, St. Louis, New York, and Tampa, just to name a few. Since moving to Tampa, she has co-founded the Black Lives Matter Tampa chapter, helped lead the charge for the Tampa Civilian Review Board, and is an active participant in the Community Protection Coalition. She also works as a professional organizer for a nationwide organization. Thank you to both of you for being with us tonight. So to get started, can you each tell us a little bit about when and why you personally decided to get involved in academia and or activism?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, and nothing was happening there. There was obvious racism. Communities were segregated for the most part, very conservative. We call it in political organizing, we call it the Great GOP North. So you can imagine what was going on. I should not tell you the decade I was born in, but what was going on in the 70s and the 80s when I was a child. And I read a lot, and I wanted to see why the things that were happening in New York and in California weren't happening in Jacksonville. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, a few other seminal works from noted revolutionaries from the civil rights era, and I decided that there had to be changes, and I wanted to be one of those people.
Well, I won't tell my decades either, but I will say, I'll tell you. First of all, I want to say that, thank you very much to these young women. Would you please give them a hand? I'm so proud of you. This is really a wonderful event, and I really appreciate you inviting us to speak tonight. I first want to say that my life as a scholar and as an academic is really informed by my lived experience, which many feminist scholars will say. And it's also informed by my experience as an activist. Before I became a scholar, before I became a teacher, a researcher, I was very involved in feminist activism. And for me, that meant struggling not just against racism, because really, I grew up during the Jim Crow era. I grew up during the era of segregation, and racism was the enemy, of course. But at the time, racism was all I knew. I understood that we were to fight racism. I grew up in the home of a civil rights lawyer, so the civil rights movement was always in our home. We always talked about it. We always knew what actions were going on, and we always knew what we were to do. But as I grew older, just as you said, I began reading and understanding that along with racism, there was patriarchy, there was prejudice and discrimination against gays and lesbians, there were all kinds of intersecting forms of oppression that not only affected my life, but those around us. Racism doesn't just affect Black people and other people of color. It affects all of us. It affects the way we live. It affects the way we think. And we are all diminished by it. We're all diminished by all forms of oppression. So I decided to dedicate my life to not only trying to teach students about this, but also being involved in the community, not just hiding here in this wonderful, relatively safe community, but also knowing that I needed to be informed by what was going on in the larger community. So that's kind of an answer to that question.
And how would each of you describe or define the Black Lives Matter movement?
You know, I was going over this morning, and I have 8 different answers, and I'm going to give you 2. Okay. Since the advent of Africans on these shores, there have been, the freedoms that we've enjoyed have been non-existent or incomplete. So the quest for Black liberation has peaked and fallen and peaked and fallen. And Black Lives Matter movement is yet another iteration of that quest for Black liberation. And these peaks and crests, some are louder than others, and some are fought differently. You know, there was a period in the 80s where people just wanted to go to the Ivy League. That was the big deal. You had broken the ceiling if you got into the Ivy League. Oh, he went to Princeton. It was a big deal. He's a judge. So if you could ascend to those high levels of the professional world, you were great. As the kids say, you're Gucci. Right? So literally, probably.
Yeah, literally, like it.
And so the Black Lives Matter movement, I think it resonated with people because this time we realized that in order to get those things, in order for 2/3 of our children to not be languishing in poverty, in order to have the good schools that led to, away from the prison pipeline, and into the Ivy League, or into whatever manifestation of the American dream we were advancing or enjoying at the moment, right? We're indulging ourselves in any period of American history. That we realized that until we mattered, until we were fully humanized, there was no way any of those things were going to manifest for us as a general population, right? And so we went back, you know, to the element of we matter. And the proof of how entrenched I'm thinking of the book, but this bridge called My Back, and how committed the American middle class, mostly white, not all, is to people of African descent being the bumper pad and the crib of our societies, right? To make sure that everything goes smoothly. There is an almost subconscious awareness that if Black people and women and other minorities and poor people are removed from those spaces, that someone has to occupy that space because we live in a hierarchical society. And so while white liberals, I don't even remember the question anymore. While white liberals say to us, we have to have unity, this lazy, simplistic investment in unity at the cost of really understanding the depth of Black struggle is tone deaf and serving as a serious linchpin that's been removed. We can't actually bring things together because there's an unwillingness and a resistance, and I don't think that it's a practical resistance. I think that it's a resistance that it's visceral and reflexive. It sits in the gut. That could happen to me. And so when we say to Black people, say, oh, all Black people have to do is go to school, get an education, you get a great job, you stay out of jail. And then you ask the same group of people, would you want to be Black if you had a great job and you've never been to jail and you lived in a great neighborhood? The answer is no. Because down here in the viscera, there's that knowledge that I'm going to have to endure something that is undesirable if I occupy that space. And yet people will use those same mouths to say, the only problem is you. But you don't want to be that. And you understand what being me is. Okay? So Black Lives Matter is returning to that element of saying we matter and that I am a human being. And actually to even service the first question, I escaped my childhood with the notion that I was a human being. And this is what caused me to jump out of the pit. Right? And so Black Lives Matter is another iteration where we knew that we had to return to the fundament of feeling human ourselves, not even asking and commanding people in other populations to say, yes, you matter, but to simply say, I matter to me, to examine my own multi-generational trauma, to understand what it meant. Do you remember the first time you lost someone? The unbelievable space and emptiness that's left there that nobody can do anything about. That's what happened when I realized I was Black in America and that people were going to systematically and casually deny me my humanity. And so Black Lives Matter is the way that Black people are saying to ourselves more than anyone else that we too are human beings. And we are no longer going to sanitize or suppress our rage. That the reclamation is not just about certain Black people or respectable Black people, but all Black lives. And Black Lives Matter does something that our prior movements haven't done. It's brought people from the margins of society because there's a genius in being a grassroots woman. Because of what happens when you live and survive on the margins of society, you develop a set of skills that's specific and unique to that survival. And until our feminism in general is informed by that movement, there's no way we can solve the problem. Who knows the problem? Who knows how to solve the problem better than people who are bearing the brunt of the worst aspects of oppression in the world, not just in the United States. So Black Lives Matter is addressing all of those things. We're not just looking at women. We're talking about First Nations rights. We're talking about the rights of trans youth, because gender is another conversation that undergirds Black oppression, right? They go hand in hand. You can't extricate. You simply cannot have a conversation about race without having a conversation about gender. And so womanism, Alice Walker said, is feminist, but only more common, right? And it's informed by three things, and then I'll stop. By humans, the environment, and spirit, and our relationship to those things. And that we cannot sustainably change any of that without dealing with the things that we don't see. So when you hear Dream Defenders say, power, transformation, and miracles, did you feel that? They're talking about transmuting. It's an alchemy of sorts. Womanism is a social change perspective. And Black Lives Matter is yet another iteration that include so many more aspects that weren't included in previous iterations of Restaurant.
That was powerful. And the term Black Lives Matter is powerful. It's a powerful statement of Black humanity. And Black humanity is something that so many movements, so many activists, so many individuals really try to either disguise or not even aware of often. Black humanity. The idea that a poor little boy who goes to school smelly and dirty and hungry matters. That his experiences as a poor child really are experiences of concern, that it's not his fault that he was born into poverty, that he shouldn't be dismissed, that he shouldn't be thought of as someone who's on his way to prison. When we say Black Lives Matter, we are really guiding a new narrative about who we are. During the civil rights years, there were numerous acronyms of organizations that were fighting for social change. There was the NAACP, National Association for Advancement of Colored People. There was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There was the Congress of Racial Equality. There were many, many, many organizations that had their own directions and had their own visions, and that sought to work together. But in all those names, we never got a sense of the kind of power that speaks to the humanity of Black folk. So that invisibility of our realness, of the validity of our experiences, didn't really move people when Black men and women were hanging from trees. It didn't really move people when, you know, somebody could blow you over with a water hose or spit in your face, because you weren't real. You were just the other. And it's, so when I hear the term Black Lives Matter, it was not an accident that term came out of Patrice Cullors or of one of their mouths. It was not an accident. It was something that we all had felt at some point in our lives. I matter. I am somebody. Remember Jesse Jackson used to say, I am somebody. That was the same kind of thought and idea. I am a human being, and you have denied me my humanity, and I matter. So I think that this is a powerful way to change thought, to change the narrative, to change who we think we are. And I also think that, you know, this term, Black Lives Matter, as Donna just said, it of course is echoing, it is of course saying, it's embracing our humanity, but at the same time saying that that humanity is also about the concern for others, about the concern for trans people, about the concerns for poor people, about the concerns about gender relations. It is a broad term that encompasses many people's humanities, but we start here with the notion that Black lives do matter. Black lives count. Black lives need to be acknowledged as human beings.
If someone were to ask you, what are the most pressing issues for people of color, communities of color right now? I think maybe we begin to imagine what your answers might be.
Yeah.
but how would you expand on that?
Well, the first thing when I saw that question, I thought it was an odd question, and I wanted to shade it. But, like, why would the basic needs of people of color, Black people, be different than any other people? But then, and I thought Maslow gave us a nice setup for human needs, right? And then I thought, well, you know, don't be glib. You're here, people have asked you to come and give your perspective, so be good. And I found these stats on widespread global poverty. And disproportionately, I don't know if you all know it or not, but the majority of the people in the world are poor. And I don't mean poor like they get food stamps. I mean poor like they spend several hours a day getting water. And so I'm going to read you this list of stats because I kept getting the numbers mixed up, so I wrote them all down. 3 billion people, that's about half of the people on the planet, guys, live on less than $2.50 a day. 1.6 billion people live without electricity. 2.6 billion people lack basic sanitation. Of the 1.9 billion who live in the developing world, 1 in 3 live without adequate shelter. 1 in 5 live without safe water. And water and safe water are 2 different things, right? This is not Darsani we're talking about. And 1 in 7 lack access to health services. 7 million children in the developing world are not in school. And 30,000 children on the planet die every day from problems related to their poverty. So when we think that the majority of the people on the earth are what we deem to be people of color, right? In the construct of race, which in anthropology we learned that, I'm a dropout, but I remember, that the race is a construct like our monetary system. These are money, they're all systems of value. They're all constructed. And even though they're not real, the consequences of engaging them are, and we live through them every day. So I thought about the majority of the people on the planet are people of color. The majority of people on the planet are in poverty. That we are dealing with severe and widespread global poverty, and we are encapsulated in a bubble that acts as a buffer to the garish and heinous realities that most humans are living with on the planet. And most of those people are people of color. And Africans in America, people of African descent in America, have a very decided and pronounced privilege that we're not aware of because we too live in that bubble. And so when you talk about Africans, when we look at the global perspective, we see that it's a mess, right? And we have serious consequences, and the people in the developed world only think about it when they think it's coming to their door. And we have a moral duty of sorts not to allow the rest of the world to languish in poverty and pain to get tungsten for our iPhones. I too have an iPhone. So when I think about whether or not there's special needs that Black people have, I start thinking about state-sponsored violence. I start thinking about the vast apparatus of our oppression, how cunning and well-financed it is. I think about 1 million Black people in jail. I think about the fact that Black people make up 14% of the population of this country, and there are only 330 million of us. We're a relatively small country on a grand scale, but we have 25% of the world's prisoners, and half of those prisoners are people of African descent in America. This is all beyond problematic. This is a genocide in progress. If you look up the definition of the conventions and what a genocide is, you will be shocked to learn that it's not people riding through the streets literally shooting people down. It shows up in the disparity in healthcare. It shows up in who has access to prenatal care and how those children are schooled once they're born. So yeah, we have a lot of problems, and the main problem that Black people are facing, and the main thing we need, is for the apparatus that we've helped to build. The apparatus that our bodies and blood and bones have fueled for half a millennium. That apparatus oppresses us as if it owes us nothing, and we continue to be fuel in said apparatus, and no one gives a damn. So yes, the problems that we're facing are different. And it goes so far as the Black liberation movement in America has informed all of these other movements. It's informed the Chicano movement. It's informed the women's movement. But none of those movements, we talk about the others, but none of the other movements really touch us. So we need to matter. We need to matter to others more than just ourselves. And we too have been victimized by anti-Blackness. We embody anti-Blackness.
Right.
You see it in our communities, right? So all I can say is that Black people have the need for the apparatus that literally presses us into the earth and doesn't allow us our dignity. Life is our next. That's what Black people need.
Well, you said it all.
You should go first.
But what I am going to say to that is this. We need leadership that has integrity. Right? We need leadership that is really, that cares, that is ashamed to lie. Okay? We need leadership that is not grounded in capitalism and in all forms of hierarchy and oppression. We need something that we've never had. We need leadership that is willing to really look at the ugliness of this country, because it is very, very ugly. I become very, very frustrated when I hear people wanting to deny the reality of our history. Our history is something that we need to bathe in. We need to wake up and look at it every single day and realize how it has just stifled us. And we shouldn't run away from it. We should see how it's crippled us and it's blinded us. And yes, you're right. So many Black people think that because we have the basics, that somehow or another social justice has been done because we have a roof over our heads and we have cars to drive. But the reality of it is that so many people are walking around not really even understanding how we got to this point. You know, so many people are, you know, like me. We're right now we're walking around stunned. Like, how did we get to this? How did we get to this point right here? Well, part of it is because we don't even understand our history, and we're so willing to deny that racism exists. This post-racism, please take that out of your vocabulary. Post-racial society. That was never real. That was never ever real. And it really doesn't matter. It's not even a concept that we need. We don't even need to be thinking about that. We need to be thinking about how we can empower ourselves and others to turn this mother around, to change this thing before we really go off into the deep end. Because you talk about interconnection, race, gender, class, sexuality, but there's also the natural environment that is also suffering from our abuse and misdeeds. And all those things are connected. Everything. The greed is connected to environmental devastation. Our lack of love for each other, our lack of concern for each other, it is directly causing environmental degradation. So that question is really an important one, and it's one that should be addressed every single day of the world. It should be something that we're all asking ourselves. What is it that we need to be doing? And so while I'm at it, I want to say this. don't stop fighting. Whatever it is you're trying to do right now, whatever it is, whatever you think is the thing that you should be doing to be an activist, to be involved, do it. Don't be lulled into thinking that anything has changed. Okay, things get worse every single day. I'm sorry to tell you that, just in case you're not paying attention. Wake up, because it gets worse every single day. And it's not going to change. It is not going to change by, you know, the people in Congress. It's not going to change any other way except for what we do. It is the grassroots people. It is that's the only way that things are going to change, is that we do it. So please stay awake and tell your friends to stay awake, and touch somebody every day and say, please wake up, because it's on us. It's our responsibility to make those changes. And so what I started doing was, aside from, you know, and I want you to talk about what you're doing, because I think it's really, really important. But what I've been doing is looking up some of the organizations that have sort of sprung up since the last election, and looking and just sort of making notes of what these organizations are doing, because people really, the one good thing about what's going on right now is that a lot of people really do want to be involved. A lot of people really do want to be active and doing something. But there are a lot of dispersed kinds of organizations. When you look up, Indivisible, for example, there are a lot of organizations underneath that. So, you know, there's the National Organization for Women, there is the Women's Movement Florida, and many other small organizations. And I think that those are fine. I honestly think that almost anything that you do at this point is valuable. I think that you have to pace yourself, because it's a long, we have a long journey ahead of us. Don't be fooled. We have a long journey ahead of us. So whatever it is you do, you focus on that, and it's something grab onto something that you're passionate about, and make that work for you, and understand that this isn't a, you know, it's not a pretty process, and it's not a comfortable process. And the work that you have to do is, again, it's difficult, and it can be discouraging, but keep going, you know. But with that, I want you to talk about what you're doing, what Black Lives Matter is doing.
Okay, so, you know, I organize with a lot of organizations. No, I know you're gonna laugh. And I told Becky this morning, if I say all of the organizations that we're organizing with right now, people are gonna think I have issues. Because it's really ridiculous. And I mean, just looking around the room, I see Progress Pinellas, is that right? I see Ms. Davis. I see Moses House. I see ADP. I see, let's see, who's back? I see the Women's March, St. Pete. I see Out and Loud, Florida. I see Organized Florida. I see Stetson University, student activists about to take the bar. These are my people in this room, and we have boots on the ground everywhere. I see people who do the pop-up events and stand out on the corner in the rain for hours at a time. I see Path Forward. I see Glenn, who is always there at the right moments, being the soldier that you've always been. So this room is actually full of activism.
Which is wonderful.
It's wonderful.
I called one of my daughters and just to ask her what just to say hi, and she said, I can't talk to you, I'm on my way to an ACLU meeting. So that's another one of the organizations. You know, there are some you know, organizations that have been around for a really long time and were hurting for membership, and now they're growing. There's on campus just a couple of weeks ago, or I can't remember exactly what day it was, but there was the Moms Demand Action, and at my church we're really involved in gun violence issues and other, and I'm the chair of the social justice, social action committee, so there are a lot of other issues that we work on, but there are a wealth of organizations, as you said, to be involved in.
Right. Some of the specific projects that we're working on is showing up for racial justice, right? You were at the meeting last night. It's an incredible energy. We had over 100 people in the room. This organization is about a month old. 5 days after our inception, and let me give you a little bit of information about that, because some of you are probably going to want to know about Surge. Showing Up for Racial Justice is the allyship arm of Black Lives Matter. It was founded because a lot of non-Black people, specifically white people, because we do organize with POCs, were saying, what can we do to support this? And so Surge was born. It was actually constructed by Maurice Mitchell and Alicia Garza. Maurice Mitchell is actually the head of the Movement for Black Lives, M4BL, which is 50 organizations, of which Black Lives Matter is one and the largest. So Alicia and Maurice work together a lot. Now, after the election, people were really like frenetic and wanted to put some roots down somewhere. And so we said, let's start a Surge chapter. So I'm on Facebook, and I say on Facebook, hey, can you start a Surge chapter for us? And then someone else says, I want to start a Surge chapter. So then we had 4 people, and the next thing you know, those horrible messenger groups. Terrible way to organize, but it's everyone's preferred method, obviously. So this thing is going for 2 days, and then the Muslim ban. And then someone says, we have to have a march. So who better to do that than Showing Up for Racial Justice? 2 o'clock in the morning, Elaine Justicia says, somebody put it up now. And I'm like, dude, are you serious, bruh? And so we put this event up in 6 hours, literally, from the early morning hours till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We put 1,000 people in the streets. Lynn, do you remember when a few years ago when they had the thing in the park and we burned the wrong flag? I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Whoops. No, yeah. Okay. Burn the wrong flag. We're supposed to burn the Confederate flag, and the American flag got burned. It was a Tampa Bay Times. Well, I was in Jackson. Have you know? Well, it was a big deal to get 50 people into the streets, right? Remember that? And everybody kept saying, you guys think you're going to reinvent the organizing scene in Tampa? And I was like, watch. Yes.
40 people, 45 people.
Every time, right?
We thought we were doing great.
Remember, we started getting scared. And my husband said, I said, I don't want to go. Maybe I could stay home. He said, you're Donna Davis. You're scared. Who would have thought? He said, are you scared? I said, yeah. I'm scared. And so there are hundreds of people now in the streets, hundreds of cops now with these people, and they're talking to me. And I'm like, what? So, and I'm afraid of police, right? Because they trigger me. And so I'm surrounded by them. I'm mid-chant, and the officer's giving me his business card. And I have a picture on Facebook of wearing purple lipstick, and I'm like, so we're out here in these streets now. Now something has happened. So we started the Surge chapter. I want to go on a straight line because I have a tendency to go on tangent. So just give me the eye. We started the Surge chapter in the aftermath of needing to place a lot of people after the election. ATTB was filled up to the gills, right? So Christine Hanna and Marcus Cleve were doing their thing. They have an amazing organizational structure chart, but he's an attorney, so he's tough. And now we're having teach-ins, right? And we knew we were going to have teach-ins in November because, you know, we'd been in the street so many times, we didn't know what else to do, right? It was getting old and stale. So we wanted to, we engaged people. We need to educate those folks, and now we're activating them. The beautiful part about it is we went from a couple dozen to we're literally training thousands of people. Tampa is going to be the Austin of Florida.
All right.
So
That sounds good.
you guys have that to look forward to. I'm going to give you a laundry list of things that have happened. Day after the election, Pamela Ferraris Gomez calls and says, we have to form a community protection coalition. If Trump wins, we're going to meet at the immigrant statue in Centennial Park tomorrow at 9 a.m. The media is going to be there, so, you know, fix your hair. And so we go to the statue, we form the CPC. She works for FLIC, Florida Immigrant Coalition. And we have this meeting, and within a month, within 2 months, we're down at the City Council in front of the Diversity Council, telling them that we want to be a sanctuary city or a welcoming city. We fill the room. The red shirts didn't know what happened to them. It was beautiful, right? And we got the committee to say yes to us. It went to the commission last night. We know we're going to lose at the commission. So we were over at CARE having a CPC meeting. We had the community there. And Reverend Russell Meyer sends me a text, and he says, the mayor's at the mosque. I said, we can't turn up at the mosque. What are you proposing? We go to the mosque and just can't shut it down. So this wonderful woman goes in the back, and we were just after World Hijab Day, and brings out a box of hijabs, and like fits us all because we're going to the mosque. So we roll up on the mayor with these hijabs on. He's like, hi ladies, he thinks we're all Muslims, right? It was hilarious. And he's like, he's doing the politician, he's politicking, yeah, right? Because he thinks that he's still talking to the Muslim community. So just took those things off, like, yo, what's up? What's good, Buckhorn? And we got him on camera saying that we should go to the city council and ask for a resolution to make our city safe. And so we did one better than that. We're going to go to the city council, ask for a resolution to ban conversion therapy for trans youth. So we have a whole list of resolutions that we're going to be asking the city council for, and if it doesn't work, we're going to the ballot. So we're going to tell Forward Majority and all of these super PACs that come to town with their own agendas, you're not going to come to town with your own agenda. We've got our own agenda, and this is what we want you to put money in. This is what's important to us as a community. And so we went to the table. We shut down. 2 years ago, we were shutting down city council, and now the mayor is like kissing our ring, right? And so that is something, that's from the playbook of the Coast. Marcos at the Daily Coast taught us that. He said, you don't ask for it, you take it. And he wrote a book called Storming the Gates. And that's been my playbook since the early 2000s when I was an anti-war activist. And we're making it even better because now we're engaging the youth. And we don't want to have a 10-year gap in organizing. I'm getting old. And so they're asking, Donna, we need you up at the front. I run 6 blocks. These things are so big now. And I'm like, I can't do this, right? Where are the kids? Although Koo is 98 pounds and 23 and she couldn't make it. I left her in front of the wings, so the wings and things. Right? But we're doing so many things. There's going to be a youth march. I want you guys to go to Surge on our Surge Tampa, standing up. We spell it all the way out for some reason. Showing up for racial justice. Showing up for racial justice. Yeah. Go to that website. Inbox, message them. They need youth organizers for the youth march. We just got endowed with $5,000 today and counting. Sound stage, marketplace. Take-home bags with all of these area organizations in them. What we've served as is a clearinghouse. When we collect lists of hundreds of names, we give them to every single organization that comes and is represented at our meetings. And so we are literally growing a field of engaged community supporters who care about what's happening. So start with Surge. They're going to be upset that I sent all these messages into the inbox. But if they come into the BLM, then I have to deal with them. So go to the Surge inbox and tell them that what your issue is, that you're concerned, and we'll act as a clearinghouse for you. If you want to work with Kate Connolly on trans issues, if you want to work with Equality Florida, we will send you to the people where you can go have a one-to-one with them and tell them what you'd like to do. So we got you.
Also, I have sign-up sheets if you're in Pinellas
See?
County. Donna yelled at me because I didn't bring my sign-up sheets one time, and it'll never happen again. So I have sign-up sheets for if you're in Pinellas, if you want to be locally organized, we get started, or if you're in any other group. So
And if you
From
have
my list.
facilitating skills and you have any interest at all in being one of the trainers for a massive, we're probably gonna do it here, massive training impact, called us up and said, we see the work that's going on down there, we wanna come in, you might end up on TV. The last time they did a training, it was on Vice on HBO. Yeah,
Nice.
right? So like your parents are gonna be home.
Do it here.
They're gonna come here and see USF.
Okay.
And do a massive community organizer
Very
training
cool.
to
We need
activate all
that.
these people. We need an army.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do, and it doesn't need to stop.
Right.
There needs to be something that's going on every single day, and so, and you know, you can't do something every single day. You have to rest, so there needs to be others who are gonna pick up the baton and keep going with it. There was a hand back there. Did you have your hand up? Okay. So, and the other piece to this, of course, is that a lot of what's happening now, particularly the activist strategies, are really informed by history. If you look at if you look at the, and of course it's different, and of course it's smarter, and of course we have technology now, and I love that. I think that that's a really good, that's how I find out everything. And I think that, but at the same time, some of the philosophies are the same, you know, which is disrupting the status quo. That's really what we're trying to do, disrupting the status quo, making people pay attention, shutting things down. So really, so it's grounded in that history of civil rights, Black Power, anti-war movement. And that's really, and I think reading that, and this, you know, this of course comes from my teacher experience, but my teacher self. But reading about those movements really will also inspire you to know that what you're doing is the right thing, and to know that you have the power. We have the power to change these things. Just like you said, you scared the mayor. So
That was the second time. Last time I was dressed up as a tooth fairy.
Well, that's what I mean about holding leadership accountable. You know, they're so accustomed to pretty much saying anything that comes into their heads to be reelected. And when you hold them accountable, when you demand that they give you an answer to something that makes sense to you, and you demand that they do something, then, you know, they look foolish when they're not, when they're, you know, blabbing on camera. So they're, you know, so it makes sense what you're trying to do, because it goes back to holding our officials accountable.
And when he goes to run for governor,
Which
we are going to put that in a television commercial. This is coming to a city near you. Yeah. So, Mayor Buckhorn, we love you.
real briefly, I'll say what I see, and that of course is things like people trying to line up along racial lines sometimes, and criticizing activists who don't want to do that, who want to work across racial lines, and who understand that, you know, we're all in this together. And that's something that I noticed just in one example, like, you know, marching in the Women's March, there were, people didn't come out and directly criticize me, but said, well, black women said they're not doing that. And I said, well, I'm a black woman and I'm doing it, and I know a whole lot of other black women who are doing it, and I really need to be out there, I need to be doing something. This is just a start, and I understand your reasoning for, for being critical of it. I can be critical of the march and still figure out how I can participate to make a difference. So I think that but that was just kind of a small thing, and I think that there are ways to remedy that, because most of the people who were talking about that are people who actually know how to work in community with others. So that's one small example of some of the rifts that can come in organizations. And again, knowing history can really help you when you start seeing those rifts, because you can read about the kinds of things that happened during the civil rights years and during the Black Power years. There were, major rifts that caused organizations to just crumble. And we don't want that to happen. There are a lot of different groups, and they have to learn how to work with each other. They have to know how to, sometimes you have to know how to give up some power in order to work with others. Because that's typically what it is. It's a power struggle. So.
Well, I've had great fun since the march. And there's a Facebook Live video on my page called Trans Lives, Pink Pussycat Hat Contrition, and the Hazards of Organizing by Donna Davis. And I was supposed to march, and I got glutened, so gluten-free, and I got gluten and I couldn't do it. And I cried because I wanted to go so bad, because the first thing that happened is that one march downtown that we were trying to buy the plane ticket, and then I said, I'm going to wait until I get the hostel. And then when I got the hostel, like they said, that room just sold. So then I didn't go, right? And then I got a space on the floor in the church, and then I got gluten. So the universe conspired to keep me away from the march. So here's what happens next. I'm watching the march on TV, and now I'm crying, right? I'm watching live feed on YouTube, because all of this agitating, all of this organizing, all of this post-boosting, $1,200, right? Like, we were spending all of this money and all of this energy, and no one would come. And then all of a sudden, the entire world is in the street, because Donald Trump said he was going to grab women by their genitalia. That hurt me, right? Because I wanted to see my sisters show up, right? And as much as I wanted to be out there. And then there was the debacle with Donna Hilton, the formerly incarcerated black woman who had spoken at the Women's March. And people were saying that she shouldn't be up there because she's a distraction. She's a formerly incarcerated person. And I was like, well, if we're not going to have a conversation about stigma, mass incarceration, situations in urban centers that lead young women of color into lives of crime, prostitution, then we're not going to have a conversation about Donna Hilton. So we're fighting on Facebook and in the back rooms on this stuff, right? And then the next segment of that was, who did I tell off next? It was making these, then there was the conversation about what color are vaginas, and are all vaginas that color, and is that what the hat means? Okay, so that went off the rails. So the whole thing got completely out of control until finally someone knitted me a hat. They knitted a hat for me. Right? And I do the live video, Pink Pussycat Hat Contrition, with this pussycat hat on, which drove a lot of people insane, and that's another story that I'm not going to tell you tonight. But at the era era. Like era people live in their own bubble, right? They're like these girls that go to Yale and they just want the same pay that the boys are getting. They don't care about anything else. And I find myself delivering a letter for the Iranian student here, Makti, who can't get back into the country. We devised, at that AVP meeting, we hatched a plan to deliver this letter to Kathy Castor in hand. Now, Kathy Castor is looking at me, and she remembers me busting into her office in DC and drinking up all the orange juice. Because they give Tropicana refrigerators in the offices for the Congress people there. They have Coca-Cola in the Georgia Senate Congress people's office. But, and hitting the table and saying, you can't tell a constituent story if you haven't spoken to the constituents. So she's kind of looking at me like, what's up? What are you gonna do? And we give her the letter, but these electeds are in a very different place now because it's an elector's market. And I am arguing with Jessica Vaughn about subjugating me and being a black woman and how they're not listening. And then at the same time I'm arguing her, she's inviting me to a panel. And so finally, I got on the phone with Alicia D'Amico from ATTB. It took us 3 days to actually hear each other, but we did. And now we're planning this big training together, right? So when I saw Jessica Vaughn again, she was like, hey. And I was like, girl, let me tell you what. And she said, that's great. And so the panel is about talking about, I mean, hell, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Ida B. Wells had this same problem.
They had fights.
Same problem.
They fought with each other. Ida B. Wells had to deal with a lot of racism.
Yes.
White women didn't understand black women. They wanted black women somehow to adopt the same kinds of perspectives, even though white women's knowledge of black women's humanity was completely invisible. So we're still struggling with those same kinds of issues, where people don't see you as, they really don't see you as equal. They're not really internalizing you as a human being. So you have some kind of special role to play. Black women sometimes feel like we're expected to play some kind of special role. We're supposed to be some kind of stereotype. We're supposed to be the comforter. We're supposed to be the entertainer. We're supposed to be the people who say, we'll make everything all right. And no, we won't, because everything is not all right, and we're not here to comfort you or entertain you. We're not here to be your maid. That was the purpose of the maids. That was the purpose of the slave women saying, oh, it'll be all right, Miss Sally. No, it won't be all right. And we're not going to perpetuate that history. So yes, again, and even an activist like Ida B. Wells, who was fighting lynching, she was leading an anti-lynching campaign. She had trouble with white women as she was trying to explain, this is a heinous crime. It's not just a heinous crime, but it's something that's directed at black men because of you. Because of the things that you are saying. You're accusing black men of rape, and even if it was a consensual relationship and they're hanging in trees, and yet you want me to collaborate with you. You expect me to be kind and nice. So similar kinds of attitudes are still occurring. So yeah, so that's the problem of organizing. That is perpetual.
And so we're not being, I simply refuse to be conciliatory until I believe that we have actually reached an understanding. And with Alicia, we reached an understanding. And now we're looking to reach that understanding. And now the Women's March is like trying to finance our talks about intersectionality. So they're providing us resources to be able to make those connections. We were getting those calls today. we decided that we'd like to help you get that word out. And we want to be educated on intersectionality. So it was worth the struggle, right? And I got a hat out of the deal.
Every single day there is something that tells me that people do not understand, you know, my experience and what it means to be black on a predominantly white campus. So you have to pursue that, your job and your mission and what it is you feel like you're supposed to be doing. You have to pursue it in every way possible. And I know that, you know, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to do things in a businesslike manner. You want to do things so that you won't have to walk away and say goodbye, because if you leave, then you can't help the people that you're trying to help. So sometimes you do things carefully, but you always do things honestly. I have always wanted to do whatever it is I want to do with integrity. So I don't want to do things behind people's backs. I don't want to tell different stories to different people. If I want to do something to help a student, I'll figure out a way, and I do it all the time. I'll figure out a way, first of all, to try to understand where do I have to go to help this student get what he or she needs. And then I can say this, I'm old, so I've been around for a long time. So and there really is an advantage of that, because I'm fearless. I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm not afraid of losing my job. I'm not afraid of what people think of me. And that has to do, I guess that has to do with my age and experience. Because I know that, you know, at the end of the day, I have to live with me. So I want to do, I want to leave some leaders behind. And that's the guiding thing right there. I want to leave behind me people who have the courage to do what is supposed to be done. And I need to be a role model for them. I need to show them that I'm willing to step out here for you, and I'm willing to, I want you to be, I want you to take up what I'm giving you the tools. I want you to take that up, and I want you to do the same thing. I want you to pay it forward, do the same thing for someone. So that's really not an easy question to answer, but I think that holding on to your integrity and holding on to your vision is something that you just have to do every single day. And knowing that you owe those students everything that you can give them.
Can I add something to that?
Certainly.
I read a book once called Power versus Force. Right? Remember that book? And in the book, the author postulates that there is power and there is force. And force is what is happening in the White House, right? And power is intrinsic. And in the animal kingdom, animals, well, there are people in the animal kingdom too. Well, we are animals, right? The great apes. But we understand when someone is standing in power. If you've ever been out in the streets on the line, and you're eyeball to eyeball with the police, and I am chanting Asada into the bullhorn, and I am looking at this officer in his eye while I'm doing that, he understands that he can't subjugate that, and you can see the fear in his eyes. When he takes me and throws me on the ground and hog ties me, it hurts. Not that that's ever happened, but it would hurt, but that's force. You understand? So if you're standing in your power and you feel it in your center. That's that third wheel of womanism. Humans, environment, spirituality. When you are standing in the truth of what you know to be right, and you deliver that, the other party will always yield to that. And that is your power. It is your heritage. It is your birthright as a woman, right? And so when you go to address something, the first thing you want to do is dress yourself down, right? Before you go and attack the others. How the pussy hat thing got out of control, right? Make sure that you're not petty and that you have acquainted yourself with the nature of your anger. And that's going to allow you to speak truthfully and honor the other person's need for dignity, and you watch how they treat you. What we're seeking, people say, oh, you're not doing anything, it's not doing anything. What we're seeking is a shift in the culture, right? So when we say, you heard the Dream Defenders chant, power, transformation, and miracles, I want it, I need it right now, right now, right now. You've heard them chant that? If you've ever seen, they go to a training, and they learn how to center themselves, and they're drawing this energy up out of their center. And that might sound a little hokey pokey metaphysical for you guys, but think about how the British, how the Indians got the British out of their country. You think about how the Haitians were never really conquered, how they beat the French. You think about Vietnam, right? So when you're asking yourself this question about how we're going to get out of this and how we're going to legislate hearts and minds, how we're going to shift, and we're not. We're going to transform and transcend. Okay? That's what we're going after. Bob Marley said, come, we go chop down Babylon. Right? What was he saying? He's talking about the same thing you read about in the Bible. Not even a religious person, but I understood the Battle of Jericho. Right? He said, go around the city 7 times, blow the trumpet, and the walls will come down. There is something in the unseen that these people are not accounting for. And always remember this, there's more of us than there are of them. Right. All we would have to do is some good math, and we could get ourselves out of this tomorrow. Yeah.
And that is something to remember. The power in
so
numbers,
simple,
right? The power in numbers, and and I keep feeling every day like there's all these distractions. There's all these ways that we're being distracted. Just turn off the TV. Stop listening to the commentary, because they're just saying the same stuff over and over again, and we get caught up in listening to that or talking back to the TV. Don't do that. Don't do that. Get your people and get them to get out in the street. Go to the trainings. Go to the meetings. Don't waste your time, trying to listen to what those absolutely insane people are doing up there. I don't even want to try to understand it anymore. It's not my. It's too much energy for me. It takes up too much of my good energy to try to understand what the hell is going on up there. Never mind. So never mind. Let me do something that will create change. Let me do something positive that will make a difference, rather than trying to focus on that, because that is a joke. And it's a very sad joke that's leading us to some serious destruction.
We registered, our team of 30 people registered 13,000. 6,000 of those were new registrations in Tampa, right? And every time I do a campaign, I promise myself I'm not going to start beating people to go to the polls, right? Just imagine if voter turnout was 90%.
Yep.
None of this stuff would be an issue.
Yes.
Right? And so maybe the goal is to talk to our friends, because people think it's cute not to vote and to be apolitical. It's a thing now, right? And then they have a problem with Trump. You don't get to have a problem with Trump.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't. That's something that I will tell people to their faces. If you didn't vote, then don't say anything to me. Don't talk to me. If you didn't vote, you don't get to speak. You don't get to complain. So, yeah, getting people to vote, that isn't cute. It is absurd And I've been saying this for years. I'm always critical of people who don't vote. And, you know, again, my students look at me like, oh, well, you're an old lady. There were people who died so that you could just go and check off. I walked my 82-year-old mother into the voting booth because she was adamant that she was going to vote. What happens when people don't participate? This is the outcome. But it's something that, you know, is kind of inspiring us to do some work that we need to do. So do it and get those people out. Pull your friends out and make them go vote.
So I wanted to be a coroner, right? So I went to biological anthropology. So I wasn't having a conversation about feminism. I grew up in a home and I felt free, you know, because my dad didn't mess with me. My mom was doing her thing. And so I never thought about, I never actually needed to, at that point, view my life through a feminist or womanist lens. Later on, I realized that really I did, but that I didn't have a name for it because I don't have academic, you know, flooring. So I think that the evolution has been a non-evolution. It's there, but it's not there. Like, if you look at the principles of BLM, we're not teaching feminism, right? How I ended up in those books was I needed to understand the why of the principles, and then it took me there. So while I can have a conversation with the good doctor here, I did not go in seeking that. It was the way that our organization is structured and the principles that our charter espouses says that this is what we have to do, and that everything that we're doing is informed by gender, it is informed by class, and that as women, and specifically queer black women, right? The queer black women in our movement are centered and amplified.
Right.
When has that ever been done? So to go from the idea that women are equal and that women are powerful and that women should speak in their authentic voices to saying we are going to be led by those voices and led by those people, it's nothing short of revolutionary. So that there was a gap because the boomer generation, that cohort said we're not going to wear our bras, right? And then Generation X, we're smaller cohort, right? We're smaller than millennials and we're sandwiched in between. There's no glory to be had for us.
Right?
None. There's none. We're like we're Generation X. There you go. So because of my generational cohort, we didn't have that. We weren't the crest. We were the trough. Some of us were still down here doing the work, but to see the millennials who hate boomers, see what I did there? Reach back and take those lessons and to take those analyses and actually use them even if they're not speaking the language is a beautiful thing, don't you think?
The boomers were, and I know this because I'm one of them, were, you know, we worked in separate camps. And as I said before, some of us understood racism, some of us kind of understood sexism, some of us were struggling with our sexuality, so we were, you know, dealing with those kinds of things. A lot of us understood poverty and those kinds of experiences, but bringing those things together was really, really major. And as a, you know, as a seasoned feminist, I saw many different struggles with different kinds of women. I would go to meetings with, you know, women from all, I spent time in Illinois, and I would go to all these different meetings with diverse groups of women, and there would be harassment by men outside, mostly white males outside who, you know, didn't like women who looked like, who they thought looked like lesbians. They would be harassing those women. They would be looking at me and saying, "What are you doing there? What's a nice looking girl like you doing this. And just all those kinds of things that people went through in those dark ages. And I think that movements didn't really change. The idea of movements didn't really change until we really started understanding, or at least kind of breathing in what we know of as intersectionality. Even if you don't know the word, your experiences can tell you that these forms of oppression are interconnected, that you can't talk about one without talking about the other. You just can't anymore. And again, it goes back to that lived experience. The books, reading the books is good, but sometimes people just have the lived experience and understand and come to an understanding of what it is we're supposed to be doing just by living it. But you have to have your eyes open, and you have to be willing to understand those. You know, you have to have the ears open too. Yeah.
And I'll tell you one other thing. So we go to a meeting, and the first thing we do is we say, "What are your pronouns?" So people go, "What, huh?" And people are rattling off she, her, hers, thee, they, them, z's, theirs, theirs, right? And people are like, "What's happening?" Like people that are 40 years old are like, "I don't know what's going on," right? And so we're fluid in the language of gender, right? Or non-gendering, ungendering, if you will. I honestly believe that 15, 20 years from now, we'll be like, "Gender, remember when we had gender?"
Well, but remember when we thought gender was only women? You know, that's really a problem. That we think that when you're talking about gender, you're only talking, well, you know, he has gender, just like I have gender. I'm not just talking about me, okay? I'm talking about interactions. I'm talking about people's experiences. I'm talking about how we see the world. I'm not talking about body parts. I'm talking about a socially constructed idea about who has certain kinds of privilege and who doesn't, and what the expectations are, and how we still live with some kind of old kind of thinking about who can do what and who can go where and what goes in what, you know, those kinds of things. That's, you know, so I try to explain to students that gender is more than just talking about women and, you know, and how we, you know, have different, supposedly different body parts, and how that gets all in the way. So when we're talking about gender, we're talking about relations. We're talking about socially constructed ideas about who has privilege, who has certain kinds of privilege and who doesn't.
So I'm talking to my mom on the phone, and I say, "Mom, you know, not all women have vaginas, and not all boys have penises." And she's like, "You know, can I call you back?" Because she's 70 years old. It's never going to happen. Like in this lifetime, right? She's like, "Not today, Donna." And she'll tell me, like, you know, like everything you do has to be extra or different. Like we go to a restaurant, no special orders in New York. You know, like my dad, they shut me down. They're just like, "We just live in Jacksonville. Can you just, when you come to Jacksonville, you lived here for 20 years. When you come here, can you just be with us?"
Can you just be normal?
And no, I can't, because I don't live in that world.
Which is good.